Access to Democracy is made possible thanks to the following organizations. Recalibra Health, a new nationwide telehealth platform designed to provide safe and effective health and wellness products at affordable prices. Available products include compound GLP-1 for weight loss, as well as multiple medications for men's and women's health and hair loss, all administered under the direct supervision of expert physicians, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants. Visit recalibrahealth.com for more information. Sheridan and Dulas, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News & World Report every year since 2009. Sheridan and Dulas are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Learn more at ssdpa.com. Established in 2007 and based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, 45th Parallel Distillery was among the first 50 micro distilleries in the United States. All aspects of production occur at their facility. If you're interested in learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check their website and plan a visit to tour their facility and taste their spirits. 45thParallelDistillery.com. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has been proudly serving its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Access to Democracy. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Bill Raker. It's with great pleasure that we welcome our guest today, who's been a frequent guest on the program in the past, but is in a different capacity. So let's meet today's guest, Police Chief of Eagan, retired, Roger New. Roger, welcome again to Access to Democracy.
Bill, thank you very much, and or William, thank you very much.
Well, Bill,
yeah. So it's an honor to actually be part of the show again and be here as a guest. So,
well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for your many years of service to the city of Eagan, and we'll talk a little bit about that throughout the program, and then to say congratulations again on your retirement.
Yes. Thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it.
So let's go back to the very beginning.
Yep.
Do we still call you Chief?
Is
it a title? Like, you know, if you've ever been a governor or a senator or a president, you get to keep that title forever.
Well, I think that once you have the title, it's synonymous with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, even during my tenure as chief. You know, when I was the chief, I was okay if people referred to me as Roger or Chief. I always maintained that I was never going to let the title define who I was as a person. I was going to try to define it by the way I did the work.
And I think you've done very well.
Thank you.
As your record of service to the city supports.
Yeah.
So again, back to the beginning. What first inspired you that you wanted to pursue a career in law enforcement?
Well, you know, Bill, it goes back as far back as elementary. I can remember going to school in St. Paul, and at the time, St. Paul Police Department had a program called Officer Friendly. And the officer came in and talked about his job, and immediately I became interested in law enforcement. And then throughout the years, I became actively involved in community events and volunteering. And as I got older, it just seemed to be a natural fit to get into law enforcement.
Well, I think a key word that defines you and your career is service.
Yeah.
Service to the community, service to the citizens of the community. What were some of the surprises along the way as your career developed and you progressed and got promotions and took on new responsibilities? Any surprises along the way during that time?
You know, I think the biggest surprise was early in my career. you start the job and immediately, you want to help people. That's, I could tell you over the years of hiring people, 99.9% of the people that got into the profession said they simply want to help people. And when you get in and you get into the profession, the help you're trying to provide doesn't always make people happy. And, but over time, you begin to realize that you are making a difference by stopping people and making them aware that a headlight's out, or stopping them and reminding them that the speed limit is a certain speed limit, because these are the things that inevitably will cause people to get hurt and in some cases even die because of, number one cause of death is speed in vehicles. And, you're making a difference when you're stopping speeders on the roadways.
An aspect of law enforcement has to do with safety.
Absolutely.
Which is really what you're trying to do as you enforce the laws and the regulations.
Absolutely.
Is to make life and the community safe for everyone.
Correct. And my position was our number one responsibility in law enforcement is to provide public safety. And that, always doesn't align with what other people think, but that is our responsibility in law enforcement, is to provide public safety.
So any memorable milestones throughout, 30 plus years of service here in Eagan?
Yeah.
Milestones that you'll always remember and look back on fondly?
Well, I think the very first one was being on this show with Alan Miller. I was nervous as heck, and Alan wants to interview me and talk about how I got to Eagan and whatnot. And it was a very fun and enjoyable experience with Alan. When I think about my career, just the countless people that I've met over the years that help us do our job in law enforcement. And, I've made so many friends. And one of the things that I could sit here and I could talk about the babies that were delivered, or, the big cases that we worked. But I think for me, when I start thinking about my career, I think I spent a lot of time working with kids in the community. And, one of the experiences that touched me the most was a couple of years ago when one of my DARE students sent me a letter at the police department. And in that letter, they talked about how when they were my DARE student, I didn't understand what they were going through, but my presence and what I did for them made all the difference in the world, and ultimately led them to go on to be a school nurse. And they shared with me that both their parents were addicts, but the lessons given during the DARE program helped set her on the right course and really motivate her to become the person she is today. And it was so touching, and it reminded me, after 20 plus years of doing the work of law enforcement, we are making a difference. And sometimes it's not always seen immediately, but over time, you are touching people's lives and making a difference.
That's a great example, Roger, of empathy and caring and the gratification that one like you would get in that kind of service to an individual and to the community.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes too, we take for granted, or we deal with so many things and we take for granted the importance of our work, and we just, move on to the next thing. I mean, I had hundreds of students that were my DARE students when I was a DARE instructor, and to have this student come back, it just was really touching, because it really meant that they were paying attention, listening, and the relationship that we developed was really meaningful.
Let's jump ahead a little bit
to
when you first started to think about or plan for your retirement.
Yes.
What were you anticipating or expecting? What did you think was going to happen as you transitioned from your active role into the role you're in today?
Oh, yeah. This thing called retirement has been very interesting, to say the least. You know, the role of the chief is, I mean, it's fast paced and it's very consuming, and you're put in a lot of different directions. And, you know, anyone that's connected to someone in law enforcement, you know, family member, you know, a spouse, kids, you know, brothers and sisters, you're going to see that distinct difference in that person. And it was so interesting to hear my brother say to me, this is pretty cool, I got my brother back. Because I'm able to spend more time with him. My mother and I, you know, we've had the random, you know, lunch or breakfast dates. My wife and I, we have date day once a week. My kids, my daughter actually told me I needed to go back to work. So I guess I was sitting around the couch too much, but it was, you know, when I was done on November 1st, and I can tell you it took about 30 days to really decompress and embrace going from 150 miles per hour a day to 0. And I've embraced it well. I don't know what the future holds for me, but at this present moment, I'm embracing this new chapter in life.
Well, you kind of hinted on another aspect of retirement. You know, we think of the retiree as the one that has the most impact on their life as they transition into retirement.
Yeah.
But friends and family of the retiree are impacted as well.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, my wife and kids were used to me getting up in the middle of the night and, you know, heading into work. I think they got really used to the chaos and all of the abnormal things that go along with being married to a police officer, which in part is probably why my daughter said, you need to go back to work because we need to get back that chaos back in our life. And I've said, no, that's okay.
Yeah, we'll get through this.
We'll get through it
just
fine.
bear with us a little
Yes.
bit, right?
Yes.
Well, when you thought about retirement and when you reached that point,
Yep.
did you have a bucket list in mind of some things you would like to accomplish, some things you wanted to enjoy now that you have more time and, opportunities to do that?
Yeah. One of the things I really look forward to is building things or construction. Over the years, I've dabbled in light construction, and one of the things that I've found is that it's a different way of using your mind. It's almost trying to put a puzzle together. So as we speak, I keep joking with family and friends and telling them during the day, I'm at Deck University because I am learning how to build a deck. And my plan is to hit the go button here in a couple of weeks to build this deck. But I've, you know, learned some plumbing, a little bit of electrical. I've really enjoyed doing that, and it just challenged me in a different way than policing has.
Well, I can imagine that it would.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So this spring, you're starting this. Is this a new deck or a replacement deck?
New deck.
New deck.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh. Well.
Yes. That's what my wife said too.
Well, we wish you well on that.
Yes.
That could be a bit of a challenge, but it will
Yeah.
be rewarding when it's all done and
Yes.
you can stand back and say, my handiwork, right?
Yes. Well, and Bill, the neat part about it is this. I got the time to do it. And, you know, a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have had the time to do it, and now I do. So that I'm finding things like that to fill my time. When family members and friends find out I'm capable of doing things, my phone has rang and people have asked, will you come and assist me with this project? And I've helped a little bit, but I don't want to get over inundated and and doing projects for others, but I will go help. So
Well, we won't put your phone number out to our viewers here. Okay, so that's one thing that you have on your list.
Yes.
What else is on the bucket list? Travel, maybe?
Travel, yeah. I love to travel. My wife and I recently were in Maui, really thinking about those folks because we were in many of the spaces where that have been flooded. So I feel awful for those folks because they went through a lot with the fires in Lahaina and now some of the flooding. So I hope they are able to get through that. We've been to Arizona a few times. I'm trying to negotiate as we speak with my wife trip to Australia or some far off land, but travel is one of the big things on the bucket list. And my wife would probably also tell you bucket list item is to get some of her projects done at the house as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, she has your bucket list.
Yes.
Some items that goes on your bucket list that she wants done, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I should have asked you, are they the ones I put on my list or the ones she put on the list? So, yeah.
Any others that you're anxious to pursue?
I not a whole lot. Really rest, Bill. I would say during my tenure as chief, if I had to describe my sleep habits, I would say they were awful, and I've really tried to get back into a better sleep pattern, and then just exercising, just getting back into my routine of exercising and being healthy, just to be present. My wife and I have also talked about volunteering. We want to really start getting into volunteering. So, I keep hearing, and if I'm completely honest, I'm kind of getting to a point where I'm reaching that boredom phase in retirement. And, we're always kind of looking at trying to find things to, fill our free time. And I think volunteering and giving back is one of those ways to do that.
Well, I'm sure you'll find lots of opportunities to contribute.
Yep.
So, do you have hobbies that are different than some of these projects that you have in mind?
No. My wife has some ideas for some projects. My friend Andrew Pimento he'll probably fall over laughing because she's talked about doing quite a few some projects at the art house, and pottery or different things. And I'm always wanting to go try different things. I'm not a really artistic person. I like looking at art, but seeing down making pottery and doing different things isn't my cup of tea, but my wife enjoys it, so I'll tag along and try new things.
So looking at and enjoying art is something you really like to do, but creating art, maybe you're not ready for that yet?
That's beyond my wheelhouse. And you would understand why if you saw something I made.
No, I'm not very artistic myself. I can empathize with you, Roger. Yeah. So, what do you miss about being active in law enforcement?
The people. The people in the organization. During Operation Surge here recently, I couldn't help but think about the people here in local law enforcement, and knowing, the challenges that they were faced with, and navigating, the politics that went along with that. I mean, I felt for them because I knew, it's interesting in law enforcement because you take an oath of office. And as part of that oath, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, but when you take the oath of office, you basically say you're going to uphold the Constitution of the state of Minnesota and of the United States of America. And, you're going to do it with, impartially and all the things. And, when a rule or the law say something, that means the people that have to go out and execute what that law says is the forward-facing thing. Part of it is law enforcement, and it's personalized with the public because I don't think that they understand, and they think, well, why are you doing this? Well, that's because this is what the rules are. And I've had countless discussions with people. It's important for you to know who your elected officials are, and if you don't like the rules, work to go change those rules. But that impacts those people in the uniform because they have a personal opinion about things, but it may not align necessarily with what they're actually doing. And then they're beat up, or in some cases during a protest, things are thrown at them, and it's just wrong. Now, with that said, I will say I wasn't in agreement with how ICE handled things. I don't have any problems with saying that. I'm speaking more so the impacts on local law enforcement dealing with the backlash of how things happen. So ICE, just putting it out there, they were following the rules that were put in place, but how they went about doing the work was not the right way. And again, if we don't like the rules, let's work to change those rules, because the people that are wearing the uniform are a part of public safety. They have to execute what the rules are, and they didn't create them. They're just executing what they say.
I think you're describing a little bit about what it means to be a sworn officer.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Not everybody understands
Yep.
that that's part of the role.
It's
responsibility. Not just a role, it's a responsibility.
It's interesting because, when I retired, after I retired and then Operation Surge, I was getting calls from media outlets asking to offer my perspective. I've had coffee with countless people. I've took phone calls at trying to explain, the challenge that local law enforcement is confronted with, because they are lumped in with some of the chaos that we saw take place on TV with ICE.
Mm. Yeah, and that's so unfortunate.
It's awful. Yeah, it is. And that's the part I'm going to go back to your question. I miss being there for the people and standing up for them. But at the same time, I'll be really honest with you, Bill, I was tired. And when I reached the finish line called retirement, I was ready for a break from it. And it was interesting because when I started getting those phone calls, especially after Renee Good, I said no to many of the requests, and I paused, and I just couldn't help but think of local folks that were dealing with the backlash of what had happened. But I also thought about my family, and I said, I'm not going to put my family in the thrust of this because I'll be distracted at home, and it just brings back all the stressors that went along with the job when I was doing it.
You had an exemplary career in law enforcement, spanning 30 plus years.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So if you look back at some of the earlier years in your career compared with some of the later years in your career, what changed, what shifted in law enforcement that you think made a significant impact or a difference?
Yeah, I would say the evolution of technology. When we started in law enforcement, there wasn't much of this with law enforcement. We had to figure out how do we navigate how do we navigate this thing called social media or the media to make sure the correct message was being put out. When I was in the academy, the mantra was, when you see a camera coming, walk the other way. And now when we see the camera coming, but when they are coming, by that point, we should have already started putting our notes together so we could put out the information that we want to put out. So it's been interesting too, because I think, one of the positive is just connecting and working closer with the community. I think that was something that I really enjoy, is working with community members on all things public safety, and really them welcoming law enforcement in. You have, coffee with a cop, or, you visit these different businesses to come forward to support law enforcement. Those are that when I first started, I think the support was there, but it was far more forward-facing, and really, in law enforcement, you had to do it if you wanted to have a good relationship in the community with your citizens.
Is there any kind of training that someone who's going into law enforcement today would get that maybe wasn't available or thought necessary when you were going through the training?
When I went through it, I mean, I think there's probably far more emphasis on how you communicate with people than it was when I first did it. I think there was a lot more respect given to just uniform and the presence of a police officer, where now more people are more inclined to challenge. I will say too, I think that the profession has gotten more politicized than it was way back in. I see law enforcement at times as being used as a political pawn for politics. And my personal opinion is you can't politicize public safety. Public safety, everybody wants to be safe at home, and don't put that in jeopardy by making it political.
And the same rules and laws are supposed to apply to everybody.
Everyone.
Not
Absolutely.
just
Yes.
the ones who choose to obey the law.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So, Roger, we have a couple of minutes left on the program.
Yes.
I know there's a lot we could talk about
Yep.
that you experienced being in law enforcement. Maybe more we could talk about what you are going to do or
Yep.
planning to do in your retirement. But do you have any final thoughts or words or messages that you'd like to leave with our viewers today?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I would like to say to our viewers, especially the Eagan residents, is thank you. They welcomed me into the Eagan community to become a police officer 31 years ago. And in 2018, they welcomed me as their new police chief. And I was always of the belief that I was here to serve the community members. That doesn't mean that we always had to agree on things, but I was here to serve on their behalf. And I simply would just like to say thank you for allowing me and giving me that opportunity here in the city of Eagan. It was a great experience. It was great why I did it. But I am super excited to see where the next chapter of life takes me.
Well, Roger, it's been a pleasure having you on our program today and having you share some of your experiences that you had in your career, and to talk a little bit about what you're aspiring to do in the future.
Yes.
And we'd like to say again to you, thank you for your service to our community. It has been great. I know everyone who has met you or worked with you has appreciated the opportunity to know you.
Yes. Yeah.
And congratulations.
Yep.
And we wish you the very best for you and your family
Yes.
in your retirement.
Thank you, Bill. I
Roger,
appreciate
thank
it.
you for
Yes.
being on Access to Democracy, and thank you for being our viewer today on Access to Democracy. Remember, there's more Access to Democracy you can view on accesstodemocracy.com.